What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Sunday edition of the Triple Play Fantasy Start Sit Show. You know, we're here to help you win those tough weekly matchups. Obviously, every week is a grind. Hopefully, myself and my co-host here can help make that grind a little bit easier and help make those decisions just a little bit easier to figure out here. Of course, you know, D Mendio 2 on one half of the show here, joined by at Ain't Done Yet, Jacob D. D standing for driver's seat, as right now we are in the driver's seat of the fantasy football season. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, man. I mean, it is week 7, as many have coined by Mageddon, by Apocalypse, whatever it is. You guys are hurting. I'm hurting. So if any of you guys have any questions, float it our way, because we all need help in this dire need right now.
By Mageddon, by NATO. If you had to do a one push-up for every single time you heard one of those terms used in the last week, how many push-ups do you think you'd be doing?
My arms would be extremely sore and my shoulders would be just to crap right now. I'd probably do about 130, which I can only do about 30 in a row on a good day. So yeah, I'd be hurting.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I'm most looking forward to being done with week 7 is just all that stuff finally being gone, because I'm ready just to focus back on the season. And obviously this week's been especially crazy. 6 teams on bye. So, and a lot of those with many fantasy relevant players. So that's led to a lot more questions about who you're going to start and fill in for your Austin Ecklers, for your Najee Harrises, for your Mike Williams, CeeDee Lambs, Ezekiel Elliott's. It could go on and on. But
that's right.
Let's dive in and let's figure out these dilemmas. Let's dive into some of these questions. As always, of course, any that pop in through the stream, whether it's through Twitter, through YouTube, wherever we get them. Twitter, I think, is still down, so unfortunately, probably not through Twitter. But through YouTube, we will answer, and any we've gotten prior to the show, we will answer as well. So let's start off with this first one here from at Ramirez_Nando. Would you start Jalen Waddle or Myles Gaskin? Format is not provided, so we will assume it's PPR. Jacob, where would you go with for that one?
Yeah, so I talked about this on the Super Fantasy Bro show earlier this week, but you can't start Gaskin until further notice. I mean, he followed up that 15-touch, 99-yard for 2-touchdown game against the Bucs with 7 touchdowns for 14 yards last week against the Jags defense. So yes, he has an incredible matchup this week against the Atlanta Falcons. But I mean, we saw what he did with a cake matchup last week against the Jags. So we just can't trust anyone in the Miami backfield right now. So I'm going to go with Waddle because he killed it last week. You know, he got 13 targets, I believe. It only amounted to 70 yards for 10 catches, but that's a lot of volume. And Tua's back. I want to roll with that. And see if Waddle can either top what he did or do just as well, because he also got 2 touchdowns. So I can't bench that this week against Atlanta. So give me Waddle.
I'm right there with you. Coming off of 2 touchdowns, going against that defense in Atlanta that right now is ranked 13th worst against the pass, nearly 40 fantasy points per game, giving up 7 touchdowns, though, which is tied for 4th as among as the most receiving touchdowns allowed from teams here. I do think that it's a good matchup for him. Is Devontae Parker even playing? I know he was questionable.
He's questionable, yeah. So I don't think we fully know yet. So even if Parker is playing, I mean, he's questionable leading up to the game. So that just means that Waddle's the only healthy wideout there, even if Parker plays. So I still feel comfortable with that.
I'm with you 100% on that first one. Jalen Waddle, fire him up. Next one from at Adam_Nice. I'm assuming Christian Kirk or Rashad Bateman. Interesting kind of, you would say maybe their ceilings are, or the low floor, potentially high ceiling guys here.
Right.
I think I know where I would go for this one, but Jacob, out of these 2 players right here that are kind of, I'm sure you're plugging in at the end of your starting lineup, who would you rather start?
Right. So I think that Kirk has a much higher floor. It's just that there are so many mouths to feed in Arizona, and they have a cake matchup today against the Houston Texans. So it could be that Kirk has a huge game, or he could have a goose egg, So I'm going to roll with Bateman here because last week he saw 6 targets in his first career game, which is nothing to sneeze at. And that was with the Ravens in a positive game script. So imagine today if Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals give Lamar Jackson and the Ravens a run for their money and make this a game, meaning that Jackson's going to have to throw more, which means that Bateman is going to see 6 or more targets. So I like Bateman's floor here, considering what he did last week. And Watkins is still, even if he does play, he's injured. So I would rather play Bateman here and go with that safer floor over Kirk.
Right there with you again. You
Yeah.
look at the Arizona Cardinals, who I believe are 17 points favorites right now over the Houston Texans.
Mm-hmm.
You would think they're going to get out to a lead early on. I think this could be a potentially big James Conner day.
Right.
You would assume if the ball is through the air that they're probably going to be looking at DeAndre Hopkins for the revenge game narrative against the Houston Texans his first time, or you get the new weapon Zach Ertz acclimated. Maybe he gets in the end zone facing the 32nd ranked team against tight ends that has given up 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games to tight ends. So I think all that spells no Christian Kirk. And on the flip side, you have Rashad Bateman, who had a 22% target share in his first game with the Ravens. Led the team in targets, tied for the team lead with Mark Andrews, but did out-target Hollywood Brown on less snaps. And I think that he's slowly going to become the go-to guy in that Ravens offense. And I think he's a smash here, especially if you're playing. Obviously, this was a season-long question, but in DraftKings too, he's only $3,400. He's a great cash game play today. I think I haven't checked his ownership, but I'm sure it's going to be very, very, very high as far as cash game plays for daily fantasy. So I'm smashing Rashad Bateman, just like you are as well there, Jacob.
Yes, absolutely. And he is locked into my DFS lineup. That's for sure.
Yeah, he's a smash play. Next one here. So with Kenny Golladay and Latavius Murray out, I'm left with Nyheim Hines. Would you drop Jamal Williams or Devonta Freeman for JaMychal Hasty? The team is in shambles. Have to start Swift and McKissick with Eckler on a bye. I actually don't think it's bad to start McKissick this week. I think McKissick actually is going to be a solid play for you. So he's saying he has Hines. Would you drop Jamal Williams or Freeman for Hasty this week?
No, it's Hasty's first game back, and I think this is an Elijah Mitchell week with the bad weather in San Fran. No, I would just roll with a Jamal Williams. I know it's tough out there, but so he has Heinz. I mean, I would probably start Jamal Williams out of all those options. Just saying, but I wouldn't drop any of those guys for Hasty. Now, if you have, extra room on your bench other than those guys, yes, just to see if he shares that San Francisco backfield, but I'm not going to make that move.
Now, the only reason I'm a little bit more towards Devonta Freeman over Jamal Williams, I agree, I'm not adding JaMychal Hasty for either of those guys. I'm definitely with you on that. But he's already starting DeAndre Swift. So I'm a little bit scared of starting both Lions in this game, in which a game that they're going to be, obviously, they also are going to expect it to get blown out. Sure. So I'm wondering, hey, at what point they're going to have to throw the ball through the air. I know both guys can catch the ball. But at what point, are they down enough points where they're not going to be having low A-dot throws and they're going to be focusing on more downfield? And that's what kind of scares me about starting both of them compared to if I was like, okay, I'll pick one or the other. So I would lean a little bit more towards Devonta Freeman for that reason. Just also the fact that he's supposed to be the lead back with Latavius Murray out, whatever that counts for, 10 to 15 carries. But I think there's a little bit more of a safer floor, I feel like, with Freeman in that sense. But I'm with basically the main point is I would play one of those two guys over JaMychal Hasty for sure.
Now I totally get that. I'm just afraid of that Baltimore backfield. Le'Veon Bell is active. I'm sure that Tyson Williams will be active as well. Even if he's not, I like the safety of a Jamal Williams' floor. Even though he is starting Swift, and I get that you don't want to start 2 RBs in a very negative game script. I mean, you would want to start Swift because he's going to get a lot of catches. But I like Williams' floor because he always constantly gets 10 plus touches. But I see your argument with Freeman. It is a very tough call. It's almost a coin flip. But I'd go Williams. You go Freeman. I get it.
But the main point is we're both not dropping either of those for JaMychal Hasty, which I think is
Right.
we can agree on that for sure. Our
Yes.
next one here is coming from @kid_cozy 1993. Big week in my league. I'm 5-1. Nice job. Do I pivot to James Conner over Elijah Mitchell full PPR? What do you think, Jacob? Should he go James Conner over Elijah Mitchell?
Okay, so we might differ here, David, but Elijah Mitchell is one of my favorite plays this week. You know, he looked like the RB1 right before the Niners went on their bye week last week. He had 9 carries versus Trey Lance's 16 carries. If Trey Lance didn't have all those carries, then Elijah Mitchell would have probably had like 15 carries himself with a healthy Jimmy G. Now that Jimmy G is trending towards playing, Elijah Mitchell should get a bulk of the carries. And with the bad weather in San Fran, they're going to lean on him and probably get some carries for JaMychal Hasty as well. But I can see Elijah Mitchell having 100+ yard game for at least a score. So I'm going to roll with that. I know that James Conner does have a fairly safe floor in this positive game script against the Texans. Like Kevin, my co-host on Super Fantasy, has him as his lock of the week. So he thinks that Conner can get 2 scores, like 60 to 80 yards, which he definitely can do. I would just prefer the running back in San Francisco, Elijah Mitchell, over Conner.
So I don't disagree with anything you said. I do think, especially with how I think the wind's supposed to be up to 30 miles an hour. I
Right.
was hearing already so that means it's not going to be a lot of throwing, especially not like the quarterbacks or air it out guys. Anyway, they're very much mediocre mid-tier quarterbacks.
Right.
The thing with James Conner that intrigues me, and I will say that James Conner's floor is not very good because
Right.
outside of touchdowns, he doesn't do much. But I will say this, in games that the Cardinals have won by double digits this year, James Conner's averaging 16 carries a game. Also, he's ranked in the top 3 as far as attempts inside the 5-yard line.
Right.
So they're giving him a lot of touches when they get in close, and that's the that's the part that intrigues me about James
Yeah.
Conner is that they're going to win by double digits against the Texans. That they're going to take out their most important players here. And I think James Conner, obviously with Chase Edmonds obviously already hurt. And you know what? If Kevin wasn't impatient, he would know that eventually I'm going to the point of why I'm picking James Conner. As I mentioned again, obviously that he's not breaking off 20+ yard runs anymore. But the
Right.
amount that I expect the Cardinals to be in the red zone, they'll pretty much be up double digits to where they're not going to need to risk Kyler Murray getting hurt. They'll just hand the ball off to James Conner. I do think him scoring 2 touchdowns is not as crazy as it sounds today.
No.
I don't know if I'm locking 2 touchdowns. I'm locking a touchdown for sure from Conner. And the Elijah Mitchell, Hasty is going to get some carries. Trey Sermon's going to get some carries. That's the only thing that scares me a little bit about that. So I'm not sitting here by leaps and bounds picking James Conner, but I do like James Conner a little bit more this week.
What's funny is that they're only separated by 1 or 2 spots in my rankings, and like they're both like a high-end RB2 for me in this Bipocalypse, Mageddon, by NATO week. So it's very close. I just lean towards the San Francisco running back, but I do love Conner this week, as does Kevin.
Yeah, hopefully you get to play both if you have the possibility, but I
Sure.
can agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
Let's go to our next question here from Strizzball @MarshallStrizik. Brandon Ayuk or Corey Davis today in PPR, and half PPR. I don't. That's I see you may roll Bateman over, but if I'm picking between Ayuk or Corey Davis, that is pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
Where would you go for that one?
Yeah, so I'm going with Corey Davis here just because I can't fully trust Brandon Ayuk until I see the breakout happen. Now, my hope and my prediction is that the 49ers went into their bye week prioritizing getting the ball into Ayuk's hands. Well, the weather in San Francisco is bad. So you have to account for that as well. So the breakout might not happen this week. And Ayuk has been awful all season, so I just can't trust Ayuk yet. Now, Corey Davis against the New England Patriots, I completely get. It's like the Jets should probably be shut out today unless they got better from the last time that they played them. But I am going to I'm going to go with Corey Davis here and just hope that in a negative gain script he gets a bunch of targets. I can definitely see like a 7-catch day for like 60 yards, which is decent. Whereas Ayuk could get goose egged. So I would rather have that floor with Corey Davis, even though it's very scary.
I know I use this expression a lot. It's like trash or garbage. And
Ooh.
at this point, that's what it applies here. Brandon Ayuk,
Right.
you don't know if he's going to get the ball 30-mile-per-hour winds. It's pretty disgusting. Corey Davis will get taken out of this game. As you know, Bill Belichick will always eliminate the number one.
Right.
But at the same time, you're like, maybe he gets 4 catches for 19 yards as opposed to Brandon Ayuk getting goose egged or his 1 catch or something. So I think Corey Davis has the volume to get the bigger have the bigger day. I just don't think it'll be very much there. Shout out to Ian. Good morning. Always appreciate you tuning in, man. Let's check out what question you got for us. Brandon Cooks or Jalen Waddle? I'm thinking Cooks if Parker plays, Waddle if Parker doesn't. So we did talk about Jalen Waddle a little earlier.
Yeah.
And you're starting Jalen Waddle at a lot of spots, regardless about Parker. Now, if you're presented in this situation, what do you think you're doing?
This is a fantastic question. This is almost a coin flip where, I get it. Like, if Devontae Parker plays, then I'm playing Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks had a good game last week, and they're facing an Arizona Cardinals team where he's going to get a bunch of targets. Now, I don't trust Davis Mills in the slightest, but I do trust Tua in what should be a mini shootout in Miami versus Atlanta. Now, in my head, like I could go either way and make an argument for either player, but I'm still going to go with Jalen Waddle. Even if Parker plays, I think that Tua locks on to Jalen Waddle, and the Dolphins want to get the ball in Waddle's hands. Like he had 10 catches for 70 yards. So like they were throwing short screens, hoping that Waddle would take it to the house, which he has the speed to do that. Whereas Cooks, I mean, before his good game last week, he had 2 duds the 2 weeks prior. So you just can't trust Davis Mills. I know that Cooks is quote unquote quarterback proof. He's a great wideout. I just prefer the better quarterback when it is a coin flip like this, Cooks or Waddle. I'm going with the better quarterback in Tua. So give me Jalen Waddle.
It's tough. And Ian adds too, it's it's a bit worrying with them getting destroyed by the pass rush.
Right.
Now, I'm leaning a bit more towards Brandon Cooks here.
Okay.
And the reason for that being is the Cardinals could win 40-15, 40-14, whatever, it ends up being. But I think that Brandon Cooks is one of those guys I think will benefit. Hey, it may be a garbage time touchdown.
Sure.
He may swift it, but you know what? I do think at the end of the day, when you look at that stat line, you'll be like, yeah, like it wasn't sexy, but he helped me. I mean, there's just you look at the things around it right now. The Arizona Cardinals rank basically right outside the top 10 as far as fantasy points allowed to wide receivers this year. They've also given up the second most touchdowns to wide receivers, 9 touchdowns this year to the position, over 1,000 yards. And if you look, Brandon Cooks in his career versus the Cardinals actually is averaging 82 yards per game against the Cardinals in 6 games in his career.
Okay.
So I think that there's that potential floor there that Waddle, I don't know, is established yet. And again, it may be ugly and it may be the Cardinals go up 27-0 and then they kind of back off a little bit, like take their foot off the gas. And then Davis Mills puts up, 2 passing touchdowns with his 3 interceptions and it's just an ugly game. But at the end of the day, Cooks gets there. And that's why I think I would go Brandon Cooks a little bit more in this situation. Although, again, both aren't bad plays by any means. But that's why I lean a little bit more towards Cooks.
I get that for sure.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think Arizona, as far as PFF ranks their corners as some of the worst corners in the league. Like their corners are pretty bad. So,
Arizona's corners?
Yeah.
I believe that. They got rid of Patrick Peterson and they just went straight to the shoot, man. They are a dumpster fire cornerback group.
Yeah, that's right. And Ian, yeah, like he might get 60 yards and a touchdown once they're up 27 or
Yeah,
34-0, and he just goes and gets his 60-yard touchdown and calls it a day. Like
he certainly
it's
could.
not always sexy, but I think he'll get there. Let's go
Yeah.
to another question. This one was sent to Twitter from Jesus Angel Duarte Telez at Duarte_Telez. He's got Steve Slayton. Oh, that's a throwback name.
Nice.
He's got Darius Slayton, Rashad Bateman, Mecole Hardman, Christian Kirk, or Darnell Mooney. So he looks like he's only picking one out of those
Okay.
5, looking for higher upside scoring, 15 plus points in half PPR. So he's looking for that boom play out of
Okay.
Darius Slayton, Rashad Bateman, Mecole Hardman, Christian Kirk, and Darnell Mooney. Who would you go with, Jacob?
All of these guys have boom potential, but the name that stood out to me and who I would start if it were my team is Darnell Mooney. I just really like his matchup this week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, whom they have been very generous to wide receivers this season. I believe they are allowing the 7th or 8th most fantasy points to wide receivers.
Mm-hmm.
In what should be a very negative game script for the Bears. I think that Justin Fields finds Mooney, and I even think this is an A-Rob week as well. But I would rather roll with Mooney. I think he has that safe floor and that upside for you this week.
I'm right there with you, Jacob. I think
Nice.
Mecole Hardman maybe is second for me, but I think it's
Yeah,
definitely those two were the ones that stuck out to me the most. And like you said, they're going to be down game script, that they're great against the run, horrible against the pass.
right,
Allen Robinson right now is questionable. So even if he does play, he's probably not 100%.
right.
And
True.
the bigger big play threat is Darnell Mooney. He's the one that gets behind the defense.
So
And
fast.
yeah, and so I think if you're talking about the big play upside, right there with you, Jacob. I think Darnell Mooney is definitely the way to go for that one.
Solid.
Let's go to another one here. This one is from Jordan McClure at JMCC or at JMCClure24. So he basically has his starting lineup, and he has Sterling Shepard in as of right now. If Sterling Shepard does not play, who would you rather play between Robby Anderson, Marquez Callaway, or St. Brown from the Lions?
Right. So right away, I'm going with Robby Anderson. He has 29 targets over his last 3 games. Now, he's not doing much with those targets, but that is an incredible sign. So I'm going to go with Robby in what should be. I mean, I'm on the fence with calling my shot here, but I think that he finally breaks out to the tune of 7 catches for 80 to 100 yards and a score this week, because he faces a New York Giants defense that has also been generous to wideouts this season. So I'm going to go with Robby and just hope that those targets manifest into big plays.
Yeah, I mean, again, the target share the targets he's getting is very good, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and the production hasn't been there. I do think this is a DJ Moore week, which isn't going out on a limb by any means. But
Sure.
hopefully, Robby Anderson can get it on that action too. You have to hope
Right.
that those targets turn into something at some point. Let's go
Yes,
to our guy in though.
and Terrace Marshall Jr. is out, which
Mhm.
should pretty much guarantee all the targets to Robby, because CMC's out and Terrace is out. So it's just DJ Moore, Robby Anderson, Chuba, and whoever is their third wideout in Carolina. Like Tommy Tremble is their tight end. So
Mhm.
I do like Robby's floor over those guys.
No, I agree with you 100%. And that's again, if you're looking for a guy that potentially can have the targets there, I think obviously it's shown, and the production with not many guys behind him could be there. Our guy Ian, the Khalil Herbert whisperer, as we like to call him on
Yeah,
this show here. Tried to
yeah.
see that Matt Nagy said Khalil Herbert is going to be second on the depth chart behind David Montgomery. I wonder if Herbert holds a starting job today. So interesting thought on that, Jacob. With Damian Williams active,
Mhm.
obviously he was cleared yesterday. Give me a percentage of the amount of snaps that you think Khalil Herbert plays compared to Damian Williams.
So I think it will, if it's not going to be a 50-50 split, Herbert will probably get 55 to 45 split, which lowers the ceiling for both of these guys. If it was just Herbert's backfield, he would be a smash play. But now that Damian is back, it's going to be pretty much split, which is unfortunate for both players. So, like both guys are fringe, high-end RB3s, decent flex plays, because I do think that, it's against Tampa Bay. So it's really hard to project any of these guys doing a lot in a split backfield. This may be a game where you stay away. If I had both backs, I would lean a little bit towards Herbert, since he was there last week and killed it last week, and Coach Matt Nagy probably wants to ride that hot hand. So I would go with Herbert, but they're both just low-end flex plays to like RB3, RB4s this week in a tough matchup.
Yeah, I do think, especially obviously with Damian Williams just getting cleared, I think Herbert's going to have the main amount of work in this backfield. It's just a question, again, how much. I think it's going to be a more significant split than people think. I think I could see an 80-20 split.
Wow.
And I think obviously Herbert showed he can catch the ball too. He's not going to be doing much between the tackles, I would expect. But if that pass rush is getting to Herbert or to Justin Fields, and he's got to, check the ball down, then, Khalil Herbert's right there, potentially getting some cheap catches. I wouldn't be shocked to see if Herbert's final line was like 17 for 60, and then he had 5 for 50 through the air, and maybe a receiving touchdown or something like that.
Oh my goodness.
That
would make him RB1 this week.
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe on the ground it's nothing impressive with, barely over 3 yards per carry, but I definitely don't think it's necessarily a horrible play to have him in this week. I'm not scared off personally by Damian Williams as of right now. Jacob, as we get ready to wrap things up here, any last minute things you want to leave the people with as we head into week 7?
Whew, man, in this Bipocalypse week, guys, just just set your lineup and just hope and pray, guys. I know this is tough. I also had a super quick question for you, David.
Mm-hmm.
Would you add players that you don't necessarily need, but it screws over the opponent that you're playing this week? Is that frowned upon? Is that just strategy? Like what are your quick thoughts on that?
I personally, it could be annoying, but I personally think it's a way to give yourself a fair advantage. It's not, you're not breaking the rules by doing it. You still have to drop somebody to add them. And I've actually done that in the playoffs. I haven't done that in a regular season matchup, but I've done that in the playoffs if I've played somebody and there's like a quarterback that if they're, have injury at quarterback and they're streaming quarterback every week, and I see that there's a quarterback on the waivers that has a good matchup that I could see them picking up, I'll try to go get that quarterback so that way they don't have that position. Or if I have, if it's like an example last year with like Joe Mixon, but Samaje Perine potentially could get garbage time work, and I think that he could go in and do something. I might go pick up Samaje Perine if the running backs are really thin. So I think again, I've done it. Long answer short, I've done it in the playoffs, never in a regular season game. So if you have the roster space, I think it's okay with me. What do you think?
I am 100% with you. That's playing chess when everyone else is playing checkers. Like you are taking that advantage when a lot of people wouldn't even think of that because they're too consumed with their own team, but you look at your opponent and what they need and you're playing chess. So I love it. It's strategy. Go for it. Love it.
I love it. That's a good way to close out this week.
That's right.
I also want to say before I go, AJ Dillon is getting a touchdown today. So if you have AJ Dillon, I'm putting that, I'm going to stamp as a lock this week.
I like it.
AJ Dillon in the end zone. I just feel it in my bones. So do that as you will. But thanks everybody for tuning in as they do every single week. We appreciate you guys. Jacob, I didn't even acknowledge your festive mug. Is that a pumpkin?
It's a pumpkin. That's right, man. 1 week until Halloween, guys. Cheers.
Oh my goodness. Jacob always bringing the fire with his mugs. Need to step my mug game up a little bit here. But again, thank you guys for tuning in as each and every week. We truly appreciate it. If you enjoy the show and want to support it, please make sure you leave a thumbs up or a comment on the YouTube channel. It's greatly appreciated. And if you like all this type of content, check us out throughout the week. Super Fantasy Bros, which is Jacob's show, Triple Play Fantasy Football show that I host on Tuesdays. We both host our shows on Tuesdays. And then obviously great football content throughout the week. Thanks everyone again for tuning in. And of course, good luck in By Mageddon for the last time. I don't want to hear any more of that anymore.
Please.
And we'll see you guys in week 8.